Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Ballengee with Golf News Net. Thanks for tuning in for our first ever Forebucks show, our preview leading into this week's PGA Tour event, the Honda Classic. So, came off a great weekend at the Players Championship. Justin Thomas, an 18-1 shot, comes away as your champion, holding off Lee Westwood and Bryson DeChambeau, who were in the final group for the second consecutive week, marking the first time in the ShotLink era that two players were in the same Sunday final group in back-to-back weeks in stroke play events. That's back to 2003, so this has been a statistical anomaly on the PGA Tour to have Lee Westwood and Bryson DeChambeau doing battle, and having Bryson only walk away with one of those at Arnold Palmer's place, the Bay Hill Invitational, and then have Justin Thomas play what amounted to be nearly a perfect round of golf on Sunday at the Players Stadium course, hitting 17 greens before just missing on the 18th hole, setting up an easy, what amounts to a one-putt but two-putt par to secure the title, his first Players Championship, his biggest win since the 2017 PGA Championship. Of those three players, we only have one of them playing this week at PGA National, the champion course. That's Lee Westwood, who has traditionally played in this tournament and over the years has done okay for himself, has never won. He only has two recognized PGA Tour wins relative to his dozens of other wins around the world, but he is in the field this week, and he is, frankly, the headliner, along with Daniel Berger. There are only eight top 50 players in the field this week. Last week at the Players, we had almost all 50, and the only reason we didn't have all 50 is because Brooks Koepka got hurt, and Matthew Wolff didn't decide to play because he was already hurt. So we would have had 50 out of 50 last week, an 80 rating in the official World Golf Ranking for first place points last week. We're looking closer around 30, 34 this week. But that's the natural consequence of being after the Players, which, whatever you think of it, you can call it a major, you don't have to. It's not officially one. But with a $15 million payday, a 5-year exemption to the winner, and all kinds of other things on the line relative and important to the PGA Tour, for all intents and purposes, the Players do treat, well, the Players like a major championship. So, very important tournament, and then you kind of have this natural fall off, which is a shame for the Honda Classic, which not too long ago, just less than 10 years ago, 6-7 years ago, was such a huge tournament because this tournament is played in Palm Beach Gardens at PGA National, not too far from Jupiter, Florida, not too far from the West Palm Beach area. So you have a lot of pros in that part of Florida these days, kind of made their move from Orlando to this part of Florida over the last decade and a half, in part because of Tiger Woods and in part because of some younger pros preferring to play out of Bears Club or Medalist, places like that. And then Grove 23 came along. But really, you had a lot of players who would treat this home game as one of the most important tournaments on the schedule. They would come and play. The crowds would get rowdy. It was a lot of fun. And now it's kind of dissipated. It had been played just before the Players Championship back in 2019, 2020. It was low-key a really great event. Sung J M won in 2020, and that was really the last substantial tournament other than the Arnold Palmer Invitational before everything went sideways with the pandemic and the PGA Tour was sent into a 3-month hiatus. So this week we've got, again, a relatively weak field, but that means there are some opportunities in the betting market. That means there are some opportunities in the DFS market, and whether you're betting on it, whether you're playing DFS, or whether you're just playing fantasy, there's a lot to think through this week at the champion course. And so we want to help you do that on this Forebucks show. So first, let's start with the golf course. PGA National is a sprawling, vast property. They have a variety of courses. One's being redone. They have the champion course, which was originally a Fazio, redone by Jack Nicklaus, who just so happens to be the de facto host of this event. The Nicklaus Children's Hospital Charities, that's really the primary beneficiary of this tournament and has been since Nicklaus was really involved. So this is one of his specials. And if you think about Nicklaus design in, let's say, the early 2000s onward, his golf courses are particularly penal. I don't know what it was about that era or why Jack was so upset. But when you play his courses that were designed just less than 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, there are a lot of things that kind of stand out and become commonplace. One, big greens. Loves big greens, Jack Nicklaus did at this point in his design career. He also loved huge undulations. Not to the point where maybe you would see a concession from a couple of weeks ago, which was the last Nicklaus course on tour played, where there were effectively large greens, but the real space that you could actually hit to was much, much smaller. The greens really a PGA National Champion course, they are what they are. I mean, there aren't tons of false fronts as you might expect a concession. It wasn't built to be such a penal golf course that misses would send you into double and triple land. That wasn't the point. This is still a resort course at its core. It's just a really hard resort course compared to what you might expect if you're a golfer who travels, what you would expect for a resort course to play for you. And so there's water in play on pretty much every hole in the golf course. There just is. Now, some of it's more in play than others. And, of course, there's the bear trap. 15, 16, 17. 2 of those are par 3s. They're pretty much all play over water. They demand your attention. They typically play into some kind of swirling, bizarre wind. We are expecting that in our forecast this week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. At least some kind of significant wind. Particularly on the weekend, it may get especially brutal. And then, even if you get through 15, 16, 17, you get to the second of 2 par 5s on the golf course with 18. You have some decisions to make. Pros who are typically trying to win this tournament will go for the green in 2, unless they've got such a comfortable lead where they're just going to try and lay up, get to a number, and just get out of there with 5 or 6 and win, take the trophy, and go home. This tournament, though, does cause a lot of pressure shots. Because of 15, 16, 17, you're bound to probably drop a shot. You probably force the issue a little bit on 18. And guys make mistakes because of that, because they're playing out of their element. They're playing out of their original game plan. So that's something to think about this week too. But this tournament is not one where you go deep typically. This is a tournament where 8, 9, 10, 12 under, those are great scores for 4 rounds at PGA Nationals Champions course. They just are. It is very difficult to rack up a lot of birdies. And one, because you're playing a par 70 golf course. They have taken away 2 of the par 5s from you for the average golfer, and now they're par 4. So your scoring opportunity against par obviously just dissipates. And we have to think about that strategically. We'll come back to that for players who are typically great on par 5s. But I will also explain why I don't necessarily love that thinking either, to a degree. You also have to think about your ability to play these par 4s because you now have more par 4s. So again, par 4 scoring is so important on the PGA Tour. It's important in golf, period. Par 3 scoring to a degree is important, yes and no. Par 5 scoring to a degree is important, yes or no. If you have a tremendous advantage and a lot of power, par 5 scoring can really work to your favor. Same thing on par 3s. But if you're not a great iron player, par 3s work against you, but you may have distance, par 5s work for you, they challenge out, or they level out a little bit. But par 4s, you can't avoid them. You have to play them, and you have to hit 2 good shots to hit a green, and then you got to be able to putt. You need to be able to play the par 4s well on the PGA Tour. That is how you gain strokes. That is how you gain strokes over your competition. Consistently, week after week, being a great par 4 player, that's where you gain strokes on the approach the most. So we have to think about that this week, probably more than we think about losing par 5 scoring, if that makes sense. Par 4s matter. They're elevated on this golf course. This tournament has a propensity for some lesser known or surprising champions at different times of their careers. Think about Patrick Harrington, who beat the favorite this week, Daniel Berger, in a playoff, 6 years ago, 2015. That Daniel Berger was even there was a shock. But Patrick Harrington wound up winning the tournament 200-1 shot. Last year you had Sung J M, who not tons and tons of people probably knew about at the time, but was just showing out on the PGA Tour, coming off the Korn Ferry, and just being a relatively dominant young player compared to his peers, and comes out and wins what turned out to be one of the low-key, most exciting golf tournaments of the year, although we didn't obviously wind up playing the full schedule. It was one of the better tournaments of the year, one of the more compelling and interesting ones, and that was because of his ball striking. He's a great ball striker, great par 4 player, has a good short game, and that is something we should talk about and when we think about our modeling for this week. At Golf Newsnet, for our Forebucks customers, for our Forebucks members, we normally talk about trying to model the golf course to see whether players fit that golf course. And when we think about the course fit, we don't think about the winner. Winners perform great every week. They crush the field the way they crush the field, and there are a lot of different ways to do that. If you're playing your best game, you can win. So let's not think about the winners. We think about course fit in terms of top 25. So what is a player who finishes in the top 25? Because that's the kind of player who has a chance to win. What does that player do statistically compared to other tournaments on the PGA Tour? And if you look at the modeling for this week and you look at what this course requires, what PGA National requires, and then you try to kind of fit guys to it, not to give away the entire secret sauce of what we're doing here, but short game and strokes gained short game, those are much more heavily weighted this week than pretty much any other week on the PGA Tour outside of a major championship. It's actually kind of ridiculous. 26% of strokes gained among players who finish in the top 25 are around the green. You're going to miss greens on this golf course, which means you have to be able to get up and down. You need to save pars, need to make birdies when you just miss par 5 greens by a little bit. That is really important this week. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in deep trouble. Putting is also extremely important on this golf course. Not quite as important as some other places, but again, 29% of those strokes gained among top 25 finishers, looking back through our database, that all is related to putting. So put those two statistics together, 29 and 26, 55% of strokes gained among the top 25 finishers in this tournament, dating back basically a decade, all short game, all inside 50 to 100 yards. That is so pivotal on this golf course this week, and we don't talk about it enough. In part because you have to gain strokes doing a good job of lag putting because you got larger surfaces. You also have to do a good job lag putting because it's hard to putt on Bermuda really well. There are some Bermuda specialists out there, of course, but it's difficult to putt big greens. It's difficult to putt on Bermuda surfaces, and it's difficult to putt these greens in particular because they're Nicklaus greens. So all of that makes sense when you think about the golf course itself. So who are some players who might fit this golf course this week? Well, think about some past winners. First, we need to say the caveat that no player that's ever won here at PGA National Champion course under Jack as the kind of figurehead for this tournament has ever won again. So think about guys like Keith Mitchell, Russell Henley, Ricky Fowler, Patrick Harrington aforementioned, Sung J M. A lot of guys who have won on this golf course where you go, okay, well, if you might be able to throw them out. I don't necessarily believe in that kind of thing, but it just hasn't happened yet. You haven't had that second champion, but among the guys on the list, that might be a course fit, given what I said, 55% of those strokes gained are going to come from your short game and inside of 100 yards. Keith Mitchell, past winner here. Lucas Glover gains a lot of strokes between those two facets of the game. Dylan Fratelli, who has kind of put on some yards this year. He's hitting the ball a whole lot farther, but he's still a very good iron player. He's very good around the greens, so he's a good player for this. Russell Knox, who is hitting about 74% of his greens this year before going into players. Again, give yourself a lot of chances. If you give yourself a good opportunity to putt, then you should do pretty well. Another guy I really like that actually didn't fit in our course fit, not quite, but I love this week because of the fit, Pat Mcazar. Pat Mcazar is playing pretty good golf. He's kind of getting back toward where he was a couple of years ago. He went on a few times in a very short period and then just kind of fell by the wayside. His short game and his putting are incredible. His ball striking is finally starting to catch up. The big man should be able to do some damage this week. We also talk about horses for courses. Of course, every week we try to find guys on those recurring courses who have a history of doing well in this tournament. And for a couple of different reasons, we don't have a whole lot of that this week. One, because the field is weaker, but also because, well, there just aren't that many horses for courses here. If you look at our list, and we'll go down it for you a little bit with a couple of names, most of these players have only 2 top 15 finishes in the last 15 years. But if you look at a lot of courses outside of the sawgrasses and major championship venues of the world, you typically find someone who's got 3, 4 top 15s in the last 5 years, sometimes 5 out of 5. Here, we only have the highest is 3. That belongs to Adam Scott and Brendan Steele, who's playing very good golf right now relative to him. And Brendan Steele also, when he's a horse for course and he's playing okay, you go with Brendan Steele because he probably more than many, if not all PGA Tour players, basically makes a lot of his money and a lot of his FedEx Cup points at just a few places. Texas Open, here, at the Safeway Open, and Napa. Those are his events. and this is one of them. We like him this week. Ricky Fowler is also a horse for course. He's also a past champion here, so if you care about curses and those types of things, then he's not your guy. And if you've seen him play golf recently, he's probably also not your guy. But he's someone you should be thinking about this week because he has a decent course history here. And eventually he's going to pop out. He used to have a great short game. He does not currently, relative to who he was before he underwent these swing changes. But that could pop back up here this week in a place where he's been successful, where he's seen success, where he's a local. All of those things kind of work for him this week. So those are some guys that I really like. So let's think about this from an outright perspective before we get into the DFS side of things and wrap up this whole thing. So if we're thinking about betting odds this week, well, first of all, we start at the top of the table, and you've got Daniel Berger in that 10 or 12 to 1 position. Started at, I believe, 12, got to 10 real quick. Some places he started at 10 and never moved. I don't like that. I don't like going that short anytime. I mean, Justin Thomas, I didn't bet at 18 to 1 last week out of principle because I just don't like betting guys less than 20. But he was the right play. He modeled out third in our model last week. He won. It made complete sense. But at 10 to 1, Daniel Berger, again, one of the top guys in our model for this week, I just don't want to look at him as picking a 10 to 1 guy. I expect to go the other way with our picks this week, and you'll see that. Daniel Berger's number 1 in our model. He is number 1. It makes sense that he's a 10 to 1 guy, but I'm just not going there. I can't support that from a betting perspective. And then you look at Sung J M, defending champion, 14 to 1, playing okay, but not his best stuff. Not like the way he came in here last year when he did his thing. And then you think about Joaquin Neiman, who has been bet down pretty substantially even since Monday. We're in Tuesday. I've seen him in places now at 12 to 1. He started at 20. He's 18 most shops. If you're thinking about that, try to get him at 18. I would not bother any lower than that. He is a low ball flight player. He has been playing great golf, but it's hard for me to argue for him at anything shorter than 18 to 1. I just can't see that. You got Lee Westwood at 20 to 1. He's been floating out there. Can he do it for 3 weeks in a row? My inclination is that he can't, because he said as much last week of the Players when he said he's a 47-year-old man and his body just doesn't keep up like it used to. So if you're thinking about Lee Westwood, you have to think about how tired is he after being in contention for 8 straight rounds to win PGA Tour events, winning $2.7 million, going to Augusta on Monday with his son, who's going to caddy for him at the Masters, to check out Augusta National Golf Club. He's got a lot of things going on, and he's really happy with where he is in life. Sometimes that doesn't work in tournament golf. Then you start to get in some guys that you might like, you might not like. Russell Henley, really consistent from week to week in terms of strokes gained, but consistent in terms of mediocrity, not necessarily consistent in terms of excellence. There's not a lot of variability in who Russell Henley is, not a whole lot up, not a whole lot down, which is great from a DFS perspective, not necessarily great from an outright perspective. Adam Scott, again, one of the few horse for courses, but it's kind of hard to love him this week. So here are my outrights for this week. I love Joaquin Neiman if you can get him at 18 to 1 or better. You're probably not going to do that, but if you got him at 18 to 1, I like what you're bringing to the table. He's the perfect golfer for this situation. I love Brendan Steele this week, 40 to 1 most places. Same reason. He's a guy who's a horse for course. He plays this type of golf course well. He is very much a creature of habit. He plays this type of golf well. I'm going to like him this week. I like Wyndham Clark this week. I liked him a couple of weeks ago at Bay Hill and immediately bit me in the butt. It didn't go very well. But I like Wyndham Clark because of the way he plays the par 5s. As I mentioned before, even though we lose 2 par 5s this week because we're playing a par 70 golf course, he can still take advantage of the 2 that he's got. And you've got 2 longer par 4s, which means he's going to play those pretty well and probably score pretty well in them. So think of them like par 5s. You may not get them from the actual scorecard, but you still get them. So I like Wyndham Clark. He has a good record here, a couple of top 15 finishes in his short PGA Tour career. Then thinking about some longer shots, Cameron Davis of Australia. I love Aussies on this golf course because they're going to be able to handle wind and weather pretty well. They know how to play golf on the ground. They know how to play on this kind of turf in these types of conditions, especially if it bakes out with wind. I love Matthew Neesmith this week, too. My model loves him because my model thinks about long term, and he gained a whole lot of strokes kind of early in his career relative to who he is. But he's a South Carolinian. He knows how to play Southern golf. He seems to play well in tougher conditions. He also seems to play well against weaker fields. I think that's kind of a good mixture for this week. I found him at 60 and 80 to 1 different places, so depending on where you're going to go, I think he's a good pick. Keegan Bradley, for the same reason, has some good course history here, but not playing incredible golf, but not playing bad golf. But this could be one of those kind of weeks where, especially if he gets brutal, putting's going to kind of be taken out of the equation because it'd be hard to stop the ball. I like him a whole lot this week. Ben On is an interesting potential flyer. He's 60 to 1. I would not get him here. If you could get him at 80, I would take him. He's playing pretty well. If you look at his last 50 tournaments, strokes gained, tee to green, and then you look at his strokes gained last 10 events, tee to green, he's playing better. He's getting there. He's moving up our model every single week. Been flirting in the 70s and 80s in recent weeks. And if you look at the model this week, he's a reasonable pick in the 20s. 26 in our ranking this week. So he's worth looking at. I mean, I'm not telling you he's going to play great, but if we're starting to think about deeper shots, I'm starting to think about Ben On a little bit, especially because not the best putter in the world. And frankly, after being humbled with that 11 last week at Sawgrass, he's going to try to make up for it a little bit. A couple other guys to like. I mentioned Russell Knox. First of all, he hits a lot of greens. Second of all, he's Scottish. He should be able to play in this weather. Johnny Vegas is an interesting pick because he did so well in Puerto Rico a few weeks ago. Opposite concession, nearly won, got pipped by Brendan Grace. I like his chances here. And then if you kind of dig a little bit deeper, I went really, really deep in digging on this one just because I wanted to have a fun sweat. My 400 to 1 sweat is Satoshi Kadaira. He won at the RBC Heritage at Harbor Town. Again, Bermuda golf course, kind of tight in a different way, but tight. Got to play in proper spots. Small targets, small effective targets. Nicklaus was involved with both, although Harbor Town was really a Pete Dye jam. But still, nonetheless, there's a Nicklaus connection there. He's 400 to 1. He's been starting to kind of figure out how to make cuts on this tour. I'm not saying that he's finishing in the top 15 and 20. He's not doing that, but he is making more cuts. He's getting to the weekend more frequently. He's not just an MC machine. So if you're going to take a deep shot, I think he'd be a fun deep shot to look at. Knowing the curse I've been on with my super long shots lately, he would be doomed immediately. But hopefully he would be an interesting sweat for a couple of beans this week. No matter how you look at it, you have to look at your top heavy players this week. And you got to think about guys who have a good track record here, but also guys that are able to play in nastier weather, keep the ball a little bit lower, and are just good par 4 players, good tee to green players, but also you got to be able to get your ball up and down. You are going to miss greens on this golf course, especially if there's wind and nasty weather. If you can get up and down, save yourself with short game, then you're going to be able to play just well enough, hopefully to survive the bear trap, survive any huge numbers, get to the end, and hoist the trophy at the Honda Classic. Hope you've enjoyed watching this show. I'm Ryan Ballengee. Please leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it. We will see you next time, and we will see you next week on the PGA Tour for the Forebucks preview show. Bye-bye, everybody.